I'd like to start off, if no one has any questions, with Hector.
No worries. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Hector Caceres. I'm a fourth year medical student at UAB applying into plastic surgery. I'm excited to kick things off today. So today I'll be presenting on a project that's deeply meaningful to me. I was originally born in Guatemala and came to the US when I was 7. So my project titled Cleft Surgery in Guatemala, the impact of Hospital de Obras Sociales del Santo Hermano Pedro, a non-governmental social aid institution. So cleft lip and palate are among the most common congenital craniofacial anomalies worldwide. Surgical intervention is the primary treatment for these anomalies, but successful outcomes depend on timely intervention, adequate follow-up care, and the integration of a multidisciplinary team. In low and middle income countries like Guatemala, access to appropriate cleft care remains a significant challenge. So our institution, Hospital Obras for short, is a hospital in Antigua, Guatemala. It's a completely socially funded, means only donation driven, nonprofit dedicated to providing social aid. In collaboration with international mission trips, this hospital plays a crucial role in delivering cleft care in the country. So our study aimed to describe a social institution's role in cleft lip and palate care in a low and middle income country. So here on the right, on the right, we have a picture of the hospital in Antigua, Guatemala. So interestingly, Antigua was actually the original capital of Guatemala. And the story goes that right behind Antigua, if you've ever been, there's a giant volcano called Volcán de Agua or water volcano. It actually ended up flooding in the crater and it kind of just destroyed the city as the water went down. And they moved the capital to now what is Guatemala City. Additionally, they had a lot of earthquakes there, so it probably wasn't a great place to put a capital. Despite this, they wanted to kind of continue the old architecture. So all the streets are made of cobblestone, and it's kind of that kind of Spanish villa, colorful architecture, as you can see. And that's actually the hospital in Antigua, which is very beautiful. So a little bit of background. So in the 1600s, Hermano Pedro actually funded this institution, and his role was to provide free care to anyone that needed it. And that's kind of been the mission of our institution since then. Today, the hospital supports malnourished children, individuals with disabilities, and the elderly, and provides surgical interventions. Yearly, around 4,000 to 6,000 operations are performed, and up to 200,000 patients receive care in our outpatient clinics and labs. So we conducted a retrospective cohort analysis of cleft lip and/or palate surgeries performed at our institution between July 1st, 2014 and December 31st, 2024. So almost a decade of data, but that was all the paper charts that we had that were actually just moved to kind of the computer. So demographic data such as the age at surgery, the gender, and the department or state in Guatemala where they lived was included. Additionally, surgical details like the type of procedure, age, and when they presented. So in total, 2,010 patients were treated by 98 different surgeons across almost a decade of data. So as you can see here on the right, it's kind of the map of Guatemala. So this is a heat map representing where our patients were from. So interestingly, Zacatepec, which is the state where Antigua is kind of right in the middle. Despite that, we see a higher concentration of patients coming from kind of the northern part of Guatemala. Specifically, the really dark one is called Alta Verapaz. That's a place that's been related to having a higher incidence of craniofacial anomalies in previous studies. So our study kind of confirmed that as well. So patients presented from 18 of the 22 Guatemalan departments, alongside 2 patients from outside the country and 26 patients from unknown locations. Patients range from 11 months of age to 11 months to 73 years of age, with an average age of 7.4 years at the time of surgery. That compared to a high-income country like the US, cleft lip is treated around 3 to 6 months of age, and cleft palate it's about 15 to 18 months. There's a big discrepancy on when these kids are being treated, kind of high-income countries and now in their lower middle-income countries. Males comprised the majority of patients at 64%, and unilateral cleft lip surgeries were the most common, which kind of aligns with the literature. Additionally, I think it's important to note that we also reported on patients that had cleft palate and lip surgeries. So the age at presentation was their age at primary surgery. So these procedures weren't done at the same time. So the monthly volume of primary cleft or palate is shown in the graph below. So as you can see, there's a significant peak of surgeries performed during the summer months. And this is due to aligning with our international mission trips. So at this moment, there's no craniofacial training in Guatemala. And all of the cleft surgeons that do exist there are coming from out of this out of the country, either training in the States or Mexico, and some have actually relocated to Guatemala. So that's something our institution is striving to improve, is not only having surgical mission trips come in, but actually training the people there that can treat the patients. As you can see, there's also a significant decrease during the COVID-19 pandemic. So due to not being able to report kind of surgical outcomes due to the how the data was presented, we wanted to use revision surgeries as a proxy to kind of showcase our outcomes and how our patients were doing. Because while it's important to treat these kids and treat specifically their lips and palates, it's not so great to kind of treat them and leave them there, right? We need to know how they do they need anything else? So we use revision surgeries as kind of our main outcome measure. So in total, 317 revision surgeries were performed, but only 124 of those revisions were on patients that were primarily treated at our institution. So actually the majority of revision surgeries that were performed were patients that were treated at some other care center in Guatemala and had some complication and came to us. One thing that we wanted to showcase specifically in the treatment of these kids is the age at which they're treated. So your cleft lip or palate can have significant issues with your speech, with your nutrition, or even kind of an aesthetic obvious deformity in the face. So being treated at a younger age has actually been related to kind of better improved outcomes. So here in this chart, we showcase our average age over the past 10 years. So in 2014, it was around 12.2, and we've seen a steady decrease all the way to 3 years of age this last year in 2024. One thing that I think is great, and I really wanted to highlight, is obviously 2020 had no surgeries, but in 2021 we saw the biggest number of cases performed at our institution from any other year. That really just highlights, not only the work our institution put in to overcome the pandemic, but also of kind of the traveling surgeons who came and wanted to provide help. So improvement in outcomes has been an important focus of our institution. With many patients presenting from rural areas, the possibility of follow-up care remains a big challenge. Many of these patients come from very rural areas in Guatemala, where we might be one of the few, if not only, sources of care that they can receive. One thing that we've used over the past 10 years to really increase our kind of outreach and be able to find kids at a younger age is the incorporation of recruitment groups. So we work alongside recruiters kind of all over the country to not only identify the kids that might be born with a cleft lip or palate, but to also have them sign up into our institution. These recruitment groups have increased profoundly over the past 10 years, and they also kind of serve as our eyes in all these rural communities. So if any issues were to arise, that be any complications, they're the ones to kind of first identify and can relate that to us so that they can come back to our institution. Additionally, nutritional optimization remains a significant challenge. Many of the kids presented to us come malnourished, and as we know, to perform surgery, it's important to have adequate nutrition. So we actually provide transportation, that'd be buses from centralized locations, housing and meals during the perioperative management of patients to really kind of improve our surgical outcomes. Despite these advancements, much is still needed to deliver adequate cleft care in rural Guatemala. So some of our conclusions, cleft care delivered at our institution has reached a wide geographic area and served a diverse patient population. As a mission-driven, donation-funded institution, it has played a vital role in providing care to children from rural indigenous communities who might otherwise go untreated. However, elevated average ages at surgery and regional disparities in patient origin reflect ongoing barriers to timely, comprehensive cleft care in a research-limited setting. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi there. I enjoyed your talk. I've gone on mission trips. The thing that interested me is what type of anesthesia did you use, the length of the procedure, and also post-operatively, where were the patients cared for? Because when I went to India, the way it worked is most of the kids I did on a straight local, because the kids realized even at age 10, if they didn't stand still, they weren't going to get their lip done. And then the more complex things were done under anesthesia. And when they were being watched, they actually had family members underneath the bed watching them for several days. So I'm curious the setup of this system, because it's a very important thing to do.
No, definitely. I think that's a great question. To my knowledge, there is kind of limited resources as far as anesthesia. So most of the procedures are done similarly under like sedation or local anesthetic. We do provide kind of limited housing for the perioperative management. So that's to optimize their nutrition status and to really, you have to bring most of the family from a very rural area to kind of stay with us. So they're actually housed at our institution as well.
Thank you, Lawrence. All right, Chris Morse, question, having spent 3 years in Mexico and seeing some of the small villages, has there been any barriers related to the cultural things related to, say, do the patients seen, are they seen as being evil or demonic or anything like that? Have you had much issues trying to get some of the barriers with other practitioners in the area and how you've overcome them?
Yeah, one of the big barriers is Guatemala has 46 different dialects. So while Spanish is the main language, there's 46 others, so it's kind of hard to not only communicate with them. So there's a lot of like physician mistrust, right? You're kind of having this quote unquote like white doctor come from the US and be kind of an angel. So there's definitely some disconnect there in the trust barrier. I haven't came across anything of them being seen as demonic or anything like that. But I will say that you see kids when I've been to the rural villages being, 22, 23 years old with kind of their cleft lips and just living a normal life, which is great to see.
Thank you. And thanks for that presentation. Of course, it's a two-way street. Obviously, it's a delicate balance with working with the local community, which you've done beautifully. But your residents are also learning something. And unfortunately, they can't get credit for these cases because they're not in an institution. However, it can be, a program can be developed where they can indeed get credit. And are you making roads to doing something like that so that it becomes part of your residency training program?
Yeah, so right now, the institution, specifically this one, is just fully based on providing social aid. So they're not necessarily looking at too much training. What they do have is about 5 or 6 surgeons who are in the hospital, and they're actually learning some of these cleft lip and palate techniques from all the visiting surgeons now that have come in from 10 years. One of my co-authors, Dr. Mayan, he's the director of surgery there, and he actually started performing some of these procedures under the guidance of Dr. Morrison, who's been there for a long time, who's also one of the co-authors, to be able to just do the surgeries without the need of someone coming in as well. So while there's no formal specific training, I do think over the past decade of people coming, they've gotten better at performing those procedures.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Please support our mission to improve quality of patient care through education. Join us, follow us, and share this content with family and friends.